Continuing with this film advance, I'm just going to put the film advance lever on the base there temporarily because it will help me get things into place. That's sufficient, that's good. At the top, I need to put the spring on here, the return spring for that little pawl. Get that into place. That pawl provides a ratchet action which ensures that the film advance spool will only move in one direction, that the film cannot be pulled back into the cassette just under its own tension. Well, that's good, that's all in place. So I should be able to fit this gear, rotate that round till it's facing the front. It's usually a good spot. Put the spring in place, which I've already put a little bit of grease on there. Put this piece in place. This drive dog, which has a tiny bevel under the underside edges. The washer. And the drive gear. Get the screw in place, and what I'm particularly interested in is making sure that that gear stays engaged with the squared off top of the shaft, because it's exceptionally enthusiastic to do anything but. That's better. That's good. Now if I press down the release lever, which latches in place, hold down the lock lever, I can revolve the film advance lever without any problem. So that's good. We can take that advance lever off the base of the camera now. It was only there temporarily while we assembled the rest of this, because it's a problem to assemble things otherwise, or can be a problem. It's not always a problem. Starting with our little lock for the rewind button. I put a bit of molybdenum paste on the end of that where it engages with the film advance shaft, or the cam on the bottom of the film advance shaft. That's so that it moves smoothly. It has a return spring. And a fixing screw, which is a shoulder screw. It has two shoulders on it. One shoulder is for the spring and one shoulder is for the lever itself to revolve around. That's good. I'm just checking that moved smoothly. And I have to lift the tail of that spring over. Zoom you in a bit, if you can see what's happening. Oh, not that much. That'll do. Is that going to focus for us? No, that'd be too easy, wouldn't it? That might be better. I have to hold back the lift the tail of that spring over the lock lever and hook it behind that little ear on the lever, because it wants to do anything a bit go in there. No, that's in, that's good. That went smoothly as these things go. Apply a little bit of grease to the shaft for the sprocket, film sprocket, and I'll apply a little bit just to the teeth on the top of that. It only needs a tiny smear there. Fit this in place. The sprocket goes on here, the slot goes to the top. Holding some tension on that with my finger from below, I can pull back this lever and then the shaft will come up past that lever. Revolving my spool, I bring the hole in the shaft on the sprocket shaft into that notch so that I can fit the screw. And now the rewind button needs to go on the base. It's a little bit of synthetic grease into the spring. Put our rewind button on there and its washer. Run that rewind button in. It doesn't want to start. I think, oh, it's going now. It's a bit tight. I suspect that that thread's been damaged in some fashion. That sort of thing's not uncommon, of course. Just trying to get my washer centered up because the washer has to pass. That's better. The shaft of that button runs through the washer. It doesn't run up against it. I'll just do that button up. I won't over tighten that. I suspect that that's been damaged in some subtle fashion. Checking that that pops back into place. It does. That all looks good. There's a bit of it's a little bit tighter than what I would expect. I suspect that I've got this. There may not be sufficient backlash here. No, that looks all right. Why does that feel tight then? Oh no, I think that's okay. Alright, that's good. Let's have a look at this. So at the base of the camera we're pretty much... Do I want the front bottom on here? I'm just trying to decide whether I need the bottom trim off in order to be able to fit the front of the camera. On the 3S you certainly do. On this camera you do not. That's good. That's a handy thing to know. Alright, so I'll swing my lock lever out of position completely. Hold back my release lever. Wind one full turn of tension on the advance. Drop my lock lever back in place to hold things in place. Fit my base trim. Put a couple of screws in there for good measure. making sure I choose the nickel plated screws, not the chrome plated screws. They are for the top cover. It's not hard to tell them apart really. The chrome screws are a much bluer silver look than the nickel, which is a much yellower look. When you see them side by side you can tell. So I'll fit my advance lever again. I'll put 3 screws in it just because it saves me having to hunt for the last screw later. Right, so what have we got? I'm just checking the action of this film advance. That's nice and smooth. The return spring on there is quite strong, but that is the position we got the camera in. It's certainly doing no harm. I'm not going to be making any changes to that. Possibly we could have got away with 1/3 of a turn less tension on there. Here's the last of the nickel plated screws of that size. While I've got the camera in that position, we can drop this bush back in place and take the tripod socket and put that on the camera, I think. If you don't bother to put that back on the camera fairly early in the process, it becomes very annoying every time you put the camera down on the bench. The button, the back release is pressed and the back springs open, and it becomes very annoying. So it's worth getting this in place. I'll do those screws up tight. That's fine. That's the base of the camera dealt with really. And our film advance largely is dealt with too. I'm looking at the top chrome trim now to see whether that I'll need to have that off in order to get the front of the camera in place. And likewise, it looks like I can leave that in place while I put the front of the camera on. So I will certainly take advantage of that fact. It's convenient to be able to get as much closed up as possible. The 2 screws here, of course, to hold that strap lug in position. Those 2 screws up. At the top of the camera, our cocking rack can go in now, and I'm looking at the state of this. I'm checking for any damage to the teeth. I'm looking for distortion or wear. There's just a slightest bit of distortion on some of the teeth on the lower part of the rack, but it's very mild. I don't think that will cause me any trouble. I'll check the action of this. I'm checking to see what position I can fit it in. If I can get it over one more tooth at this point, I can be absolutely sure it won't come back and conflict with the mirror on the rangefinder at the back, but I may not have enough space to do that. It looks like that might work. Just checking the engagement of these gears here. Make sure there's sufficient backlash there. Seeing if I've got any extra play that I can, space I can utilise. Let's just see if we can move the top of our take-up, our advanced shaft, slightly back inboard towards the centre of the camera. Yeah, it's not going to go any further than that. That cocking rack doesn't look exactly flat. I'm looking at this plane here on the rack, and it just didn't look like it was sitting exactly flat. It may be an illusion. I'm going to try it in that position. I'll put the strap lug on now. See if it'll behave itself. That screw is a bit reluctant to run in there. There might be a little touch of corrosion down at that point. And one screw here. A hold down plate here. In this post which forms the guide for the film release button. Now that doesn't want to complete the stroke, so I'm going to have to bring that back one position, one tooth. It was worth a go. Slacken this screw off and this post. Lift my rack back one tooth. Do those screws back up again. That's fine, that certainly works fine. That's working well. What I'm concerned about is at the end of the rack, I don't want it coming back against the end of the rangefinder which runs through it, this plane. But I think we're as close as we're going to be. Yep, I think that'll be good. Alright, so our film advance mechanism is all assembled. The rangefinder I can probably put in last of all, but I need to put the meter in before I put the shutter on the front. Obviously I've got to get all the cable, all the cord around the drum. That's extremely unusual. I told you that that cord was really covered in thick grease. Now I can see staining on this drum where that cord is sat over time, and that must be a corrosion process between the grease on that cord and the drum. It's effectively taken the blackening off that drum. That would have been chemically blackened brass, and some action of that grease on that cord has caused that to go away. I don't know if you can see it in the picture there. I'll zoom in a bit. But that drum has patterns on it from where the cord lay. You can see the texture of it. You can see the weave of that cord. And that had just etched in. It must just be from that nasty thick grease that was on there. Something nasty about it, probably full of sulphur or something of that nature. Not suitable for cameras, whatever it was. I think the film rewind shaft can go on now. I'll just lubricate the bush with a bit of synthetic grease. Check that turns smoothly. It does. 2 screws hold this in place. That's the major components of the top done there. Well, the mechanical components, we have our meter and drum and the rangefinder, of course, to fit. So let's have a look at this top piece here. Is everything sitting square? Just try loosening that screw off, just see if that bracket shifts. Just squaring that up. That's fine. Okay, shutter release. I will apply a little bit of molybdenum paste to this hole here where the shutter release shaft runs down, and you find its return spring. Just run a little bit on there just for good measure. Take its return spring. There are 2 springs here, of course. One is, the longer spring is for the film release lever. The shorter spring is for the shutter release. Take my film release button, just run some molybdenum paste in the centre of that. Put its return spring on. That sits there on the top cover. Then our exposure meter hooks under the bracket at the end there and should settle onto that top plate, top part of the body casting. There's a small pin on the base of it which locates it firmly. That looks good. Now the meter coupling cord, which is here somewhere. I've cleaned the cord. It was completely coated in thick grease. No apparent reason for someone to do that. I'll run the cord into place around the drum at the top of the meter. And of course it has to come down over the pulley here, through the casting, at this point. It's always tricky trying to make curly cord pass through a hole. It just wants to bounce back. Now I've got to check the run of this cord to make sure that I have got it correct. That my shutter release lead button and everything and the film release button are correctly placed. That went from there, and I don't remember whether that went to the back or the front. I'm pretty confident it went to the back. I'm going to have to check my pictures. Yes, that's correct. The top went to the back. Keeping this cord parallel and not crossing over. Cords have to pass over this pulley here. And there. It's sitting on the same pulley at the moment. That's not right. That's good. I can see that my meter is trying to escape from the top of the body. I don't want that. That film release lever has popped out. That's why that's happening. Of course, now I've lost it off the pulleys again. That is all correct and work. That's fine as far as it goes. Right, at this point, that meter is doing its best to get away up there. I'm just going to have to hold that in place with an elastic band, I think.